think about it, because there's different way to be an activist. There's different way to change and to change people's life, and also to stand with your brothers and sisters. So I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but what I want to say is that reparation, in my opinion, comes in different forms, and there's different ways of doing reparation. And I will invite each of you to think about the ways that you can apply reparation into your life, and how this reparation can spread and to your brothers, your sisters. Of course, I'm talking about Haiti, because Haiti is dear to me, and I know that it's because of the struggle of our ancestors that we are here today. So think about ways that you can implement reparation and how we can be a stronger community. So thank you very much, and I'm not going to speak too long. It was a pleasure to be part of this and to address this session.
Merci à vous.
Ah,
That's the only Creole I know.
Yeah.
I won't pretend. But thank you very much. Okay, so I have the pleasure now of introducing our main speaker for the evening, but I do really encourage you to really think about some of the things that Danielle has brought to the table in terms of thinking about the complexities of the histories of reparations in the Caribbean, particularly thinking about the history of Haiti, but then also about the situation of people of Haitian ancestry in the Dominican Republic, and how this is an echo of this deeper legacy of some of the ways in which the Emancipation Project was undermined by slaveholding interests, and that we live with still in the present. Right? So with that having been said, I'd like to introduce our main speaker, who I've known for many years, since I was very young in Barbados, and not so young anymore, but we don't need to. David Comachong is, he needs no introduction for some in this room, but I will give him the full introduction that he deserves. So he's a former senator in the government of Barbados, and he's also chairperson and one of the founders of the Clement Payne movement in Barbados. He is chairperson of the Caribbean chapter of the International Network in Defense of Humanity, and he's a member of the Barbados National Task Force on Reparations. And he has many other titles that we could list, but I will say that when I think about conversations growing up in Barbados about race, about slavery, about rethinking history, among the public figures who come most immediately to mind as having made that conversation a reality and brought it to the center of national conversation was David Comachong. So I'm very pleased to introduce him this evening, and of course I do not have the poster so I can have the exact title, but I think it was CARICOM Reparations and the Trump Threat to Venezuela and Cuba. So please join me in welcoming David Comachong. Is your phone?
Oh, that's. I'm using that too.
Oh, this is. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll leave it right there. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. And good evening, brothers and sisters. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening. I need to thank my good friend, Sakaya Thomas, Evelyn Brown, and all the other brothers and sisters who are responsible for my being here this evening. The topic of reparations is going to inform everything I say this evening. And I want to begin with a quotation that I think is rooted in reparations. It goes like this: and I know you too, believe in time, and we shall wait patiently for 200 years, if need be, to face our enemies through our posterity. When I am dead, wrap the mantle of the red, black, and green around me. For in the new life I shall rise with God's grace and blessing. Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm. Look for me all around you. I shall come and bring with me countless millions of black slaves who have died in America and the West Indies, and the millions in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. I shall write the history that will inspire the millions that are coming and leave the posterity of our enemies to reckon with the host for the deeds of their fathers. End of quote. That's the Honorable Marcus Garvey, February 10th, 1925. And I think that when I reflect on what Garvey was saying back then, it seemed to me that he was prefiguring the reparations movement. That even if we have to wait patiently for 200 years, a day of reckoning is coming. And I think that day is just about upon us now. And it's for us to make it a reality. I came to Toronto on Monday night, and on Tuesday I spoke at the Boxers annual town hall meeting. And my topic on that occasion was the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent. And I suggested that the African Canadian people need to use the UN Decade for People of African Descent to put on the national agenda, to put on the front burner of the national agenda here in Canada, all of those unfinished agenda items of the Black agenda. I want to draw to your attention that a couple months ago, the United Nations Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent delivered a report on Africa. They visited Africa, a report on Canada. They visited Canada last year, carried out investigations, and delivered a report in which they noted that structural and systemic anti-Black racism is a prominent feature of the social reality here in Canada. And they identified several racist disparities in material resources, health, education profiles. They pointed to problems with the prison system, the overabundance of Black people incarcerated in Canadian prisons. They pointed to the issue of racial profiling, police violence against young Canadians, and all the issues that you know only too well about. I don't necessarily have to repeat them here. But I would like to emphasize that point, that this UN decade, which is rooted in the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, because it was that UN conference, that 2001 Durban conference, and the Durban declaration and program of action that emerged out of it that mandated the setting up of a working group of experts on people of African descent. That working group proposed the concept of a UN decade for people of African descent. And so I would just like to signal to you that I think that it is an opportunity for us. We know the story with UN decades. There have been many, many UN decades that have come to nothing. You know, we had decades, a UN decade that was supposed to bring about the industrial development of Africa. A UN decade that was supposed to eliminate colonialism. So, you know, many, many UN decades. And quite often we hear little or nothing about them and they come to naught. So it is up to us really to try to make use of this United Nations decade. Canada has signed on to the UN decade. Canada, in signing on to the UN decade, has signed on to a process in which they have said that national governments must address the issues that are relevant to people of African descent in their countries, and that they must do so in full consultation and collaboration with the African descended population of their countries. So I want to suggest that we try to make use of this opportunity. We are now into the third year